And thanks for being with us here On Deck. We're going to take a look back at, honestly, one of my all-time favorite Orioles games. It was September the 6th, 2012. Yes, the anniversary of Cal Ripken's record-breaking game, 21-31, that back in 1995. So not only was it Cal Ripken night at the ballpark, it was a day and a night where they unveiled the new Cal Ripken statue beyond the bullpen at Camden Yards. So a special night on many levels. You have Cal Ripken night at the ballpark. And in September of 2012, Baltimoreans woke up and found out for the first time in about 14 years, they had a playoff team. They had a team that was in firm contention, not just to end the streak of losing, but also to win a division title. And the Yankees were in town. And the energy that filled the ballpark that night was a playoff-type atmosphere. It was unreal as over 46,000 fans filled in to Camden Yards. They heard a great speech from Cal, a great speech from Brother Billy. We'll hear some of that coming up, and we'll talk to Bill about that. But it was an explosive night, and the Orioles delivered. So going into this series, the Orioles and Yankees were neck and neck, as they were all season long and into October, as we know all too well. But in that game, the Orioles came to bat in the first inning, and Matt Wieters brought the house down.
Wieters had a homer off David Phelps, 2 for 4, and he goes to left field, into the corner, at the wall. Goodbye, home run! He's got another one! A 3 RB homer by Matt Wieters.
I said at the time that if there was a roof on Oriole Park at Camden Yards in that moment, it would have blown clear off. That's how loud it was, and with that, fans really understood what the stakes were in September of 2012. Now, the Orioles built a 6-1 lead in this game, only to lose it, and they actually blew the lead in the top half of the 8th inning. But in the bottom half of the 8th inning, the swing Orioles fans have been waiting for over a decade. A swing that meant the team was not going to back down. Stepping to the plate was Adam Jones.
Fly ball hit the deep left. This ball is going, wave it, bye-bye. Way back in the seats in left center. Adam Jones has put the Orioles ahead in the bottom of the 8th inning. Number 28, 7-6, Baltimore.
A lot of home runs that night at Camden Yards. A lot more home runs to come in the bottom half of the 8th inning. The Orioles go on to win the game 10-6 over the Yankees in what was a great night at Oriole Park at Camden Yards. And to help us take a look back, joining us is Roch Kubatko of MASNsports.com. Roch, it's great to see you, even if it's over this video. And let's go back, September 6, 2012, 46,000 plus at the ballpark for Cal Ripken night. And I always say this, we woke up in September of 2012 and said, is this happening? I think this is happening. Let's do this. And the Yankees were in town. I mean, there's a lot of, bad blood historically there. And these teams were neck and neck all season long. They have a big 4-game series. This is game 1. And the Orioles delivered on this night. I mean, it was an electric playoff-type atmosphere.
It was, by the way, I brought a prop. I don't know, do I have to wear a mask even here? Is that okay? Okay, thank you. All right, now let's move on. It really was electric. And first of all, I want to introduce you to a phenomenon, and maybe you're familiar with it in press box. It's the dreaded 8th inning turnaround. That happened that night. If you recall, the Orioles blew a 5-run lead in the top of the 8th to tie the game. And that is the dreaded 8th inning turnaround. If you write a game story and that happens, and either a tie game or the other team takes the lead, everybody just looks at each other and goes, you're blowing up the whole game story. And that's what happened that night. And then they come right back and hit 3 home runs in the bottom of the 8th. It was one of the most ridiculous games ever. They took that big 4-run lead in the first inning. Wieters had a big home run. And then squander the lead and then turn around and end up going ahead in the 8th with 3 home runs. And one of the things I always remember, Adam Jones, didn't he lead off the inning with the home run that gave him the lead? And he said it was the biggest hit at that point in his career. And he would hope he'd have many others. But what I thought was cool is he used to always go up to Richie Bancells, and he would ask him, how loud can this place get? And he would ask Richie that periodically, because let's face it, it wasn't that loud for a while at Camden Yards. After he hit that home run, Richie went up to him and said, that's how loud this place can get. So that explained it for him. It's like, this is how loud it can be here. Also, Buck Showalter had a great quote afterward. People ask about, hey, you give up, the 5-run lead. And he goes, it's one of those things, what are you going to do? Are you going to bleed or are you going to do something about it? We're all scribbling frantically. Like, that is the money quote right there. So it pulled them into a first-place tie with the Yankees, or trying to end the playoff drought. So there were quite a few things about that game that jump out. But that barrage in the 8th inning and the quotes afterward with Adam relaying what he asked Richie, and then Buck's quote, it made for a great game story, though it had to be written in haste.
Yeah, the Jones home run, and it was followed by another Reynolds home run, and then I think they go to a left-hander, and Davis hits one, and it just kind of kept going and going. The place was just hopping. I mean, it really did feel like this was playoff baseball at Camden Yards. After this game, the Orioles and Yankees were both 77-60. They played 9-9 in the regular season, and then, of course, 3-2 in the postseason, which was the difference, right, and all the difference to get to an ALCS. But that's how tightly packed these two teams were all summer long.
They were. And, again, the big excitement was the fact that they hadn't been in the playoffs for so long. So you had that drought and losing seasons and everything else. So it seems so the problem. It wasn't a why-not season, but it seemed a problem in a lot of ways. And if you ever go back and look at the roster, you'll say, wow, that guy was on that team. And, I mean, didn't Joe Saunders start the wild card game in Texas? And Steve Johnson was warming in the first inning. And I think Saunders gave like 5, and then they went ahead and won that game. And you still look at that roster and say, man, that was not the most talented team. It was a great job that Buck had done. And they got, some big seasons out of certain guys. And it was a typical Dan Duquette kind of team. We've talked about it before. He just plugged a lot of those holes with some guys that were either journeymen or were going to be guys who were a big part of the future that worked at that moment. I mean, Randy Wolf pitched that night of this game here.
That shocked me when I saw that one. That shocked me when I saw that.
There was a Randy Wolf sighting. So, and Pedro Strop ended up blowing a save. I think he had 6 blown saves at that point, but he had 2-something ERA. And it was later they realized, wow, this guy can't throw strikes, and that's why they let him go. So it was a really unusual type season. There are a lot of people that tell you that was their favorite Orioles season because it was so improbable, and they had games like that. And kind of baseball, the excitement came back to Baltimore after that long drought.
It really was an incredible season. I think it's just very special to end the drought, but also with some of the guys they did it with. There were, J.J. Hardy was at short. Jones was in center. Markakis was in right. Wieters was behind the dish. In that game, though, Andino hits one, and Reynolds hits a couple. He was on one of those 7 home runs in 7 days type of streaks that he got on. Jason Hamill got the ball. And I look back at that one. He starts 2 playoff games, pitches really well against Sabathia, and pitches well this night. And at that time, Hamill for Guthrie, but it obviously was a great trade.
It was. And I think it was one of those things, too, where there's some people in the organization that thought that it was a good time to move Guthrie. They not everybody liked the example he was setting for some of the younger guys, fair or otherwise. I don't know. They just felt like this would be a good time to go ahead and move him. They got what they were going to get out of him, and they wanted to go in a little bit of a different direction in that clubhouse. And Hamill ended up having some really good outings for him, and then there were some injuries. And again, it was one of those where, they had a knack for getting a lot of certain guys for a period, and then, all right, let's move on to the next guy. And Hamill was a big part of that season. And again, Andino and Mark Reynolds was one of those all-or-nothing guys, and, couldn't play third very well, but you move him over to first, and he was not graceful over there. It seemed like he always ended up on his stomach every time he tried to field a throw, but actually did pretty well over there. But he just recently announced his retirement. But he was a big part of that Orioles resurgence and one of the fun guys in the clubhouse, and the guy who kept everybody loose, a very popular player. So we should always remember Mark Reynolds' contributions.
That night at Camden Yards was amazing. Again, it was Cal Ripken night, the energy in the ballpark. I mentioned that, Cal says in his speech before the game, being an Oriole means meaningful September baseball. The crowd erupts. Bill had this amazing speech. But in that series, and there was a lot of tension all season long between these two teams, a few days later at Camden Yards, the Orioles win a controversial game where Mark Teixeira is called out at first, I think. And then that was the game, though, where Sabathia hits Nick Markakis. And, I think you can make an argument. It's impossible to prove that if Markakis is healthy in that divisional series where the Orioles maybe had a hard time in certain games coming up with that one hit, could that have been a difference maker? I know the Orioles were very angry after that game when Markakis got drilled. It was 2 days later.
You mentioned Teixeira. I'm pretty sure he said that he always dreamed as a kid of being a Yankee and being called out in a controversial
I
play
heard that rumor.
in Baltimore. It's really weird that he would have felt that, and then it happened. But yeah, you're right. The Orioles were furious. I mean, Buck, to this day, you practically have to strap him down when that subject comes up of Nick getting hit on the hand by Sabathia. They felt like that they were throwing at him, trying to come a little too far inside. And that was a huge loss for them. And that's why in 14, when the night, Clinchmas, as it's called, when they went ahead and clinched the division, Nick was a central figure in that. And I always remember him standing out in the outfield with his head down and then looking up at the scoreboard where it was said, division champions, whatever it said, the Orioles, American League East champions, and just what it meant to him taking it all in, because he really missed out on 12. So it meant so much to him as a longtime Oriole at 14 to be on the field when they did that and to be able to play in the postseason. Because that was, we'll always wonder. We'll wonder in 14 if it would have been different with Wieters and Chris Davis and Manny Machado. And in 12, you wonder without Nick. He was such an important figure and a guy that strangely was batting leadoff at times because Buck didn't have the prototypical leadoff hitter. So there were times in Nick's career where he had leadoff. But just such an important guy and played right field as well as anybody you'll see at Camden Yards. That can be tricky over there. And
that embrace Buck tries to give Nick coming off after it's clear he was hit badly and injured badly. I'll never forget that.
Yeah. And so then that's why I always enjoy watching in 14, and MASN's replayed it a few times, the post-game celebration on the field. And Nick, obviously was pied multiple times. Just and he had his family on the field, just taking that all in. Because of what it meant to him and what he missed out in a 12. But yeah, Sabathia hitting Nick, that was a very, very sore subject in Baltimore.
Well, it's fun to look back at those fun times. We have the rebroadcast of the game coming up. Roch, last thing, how are the workouts going inside your own home?
You tell me. What do you think? No, they're not going okay. We moved into this house, and actually the previous owners took a 2-car garage and converted to a yoga studio, which I thought was odd. There's mirrors on the walls, and there's like more of a padded floor. And we were thinking, well, that's not functional. We'll switch it back. And now we're like, you know what? This could actually turn out to be a home gym. So, we were thinking of registering for a wedding. We're just going to register for a place where we can get gym equipment. Now, hopefully by then, this will be lifted and I can actually get back into a gym. But in the meantime, we're doing the best we can with what we have in our garage and our yoga studio. In
your yoga studio and a makeshift gym. The old dumbbells will come out for this. I know that.
They will, yes.
Anything but a Peloton. Roch, thank you so much. We appreciate it, and we'll catch up soon. Be safe.
All right, thanks. You too.
So let's go back to what happened before the game. We mentioned it was Cal Ripken night. It is September 6th. It is the anniversary of 2131 and the unveiling of the Cal Ripken statue that still remains, obviously, at Oriole Park at Camden Yards, filling a wonderful summer at the ballpark, the 20th anniversary of the ballpark, plus all the great statues that we now all know so well. So that happens before the game. Again, a huge energy at the ballpark. You have the Yankees and the Orioles battling out all year long, meaningful baseball at Camden Yards. And that was a point Cal Ripken made in his speech that night as the statue was unveiled. He said, being an Oriole means meaningful September baseball. Cal gave a great speech, but perhaps outdone by younger brother Bill, who we had a chance to talk to on Orioles Magic, the podcast, looking back at his speech that night where he gave an airtight defense of Cal Ripken Jr.'s record-breaking streak, one that, believe it or not, there are still some critics out there trying to detract from.
I think over the time, and isn't it a sad state when you face criticism, meaning Cal faced criticism over the time for wanting to go to work every day? That's a little bit of a sad state. And believe me, the streak was not about him. He was never setting out to do it. But I remember after, I think, his rookie of the year and his MVP season back-to-back, I think he got a 4-year deal out of the mix. And I remember Senior telling him, all right, they're paying you pretty good money for coming to the yard every day and playing short. And so if Junior took that and ran with it, it's nothing more than a son's respect for a father to go out there and do your job. And the selfish part that always entered into this when people would talk about Cal really grated on me, because I believe Junior's numbers would be better. His Hall of Fame numbers, the counting numbers would be better if he was selfish. And instead of being 0 for 15 and Nolan Ryan pitching the next day, he would say, you know what, I'm taking that day off. Because when you're 0 for 15, you're scuffling. And when you're facing Nolan Ryan the next day, you might be hanging with an 0 for 18 or an 0 for 19 on your ledger. And I played with guys that would take days off. And I believe they took days off because of selfish reasons. And Junior, if he was selfish for wanting to go out and be a part of a team and be a good teammate for 1,000 years in a row like he did, then so be it. But it really grated on me when I would hear people say he was selfish. It's all about the streak. It wasn't all about the streak. It was about him being a good teammate, and no matter if he was struggling or not, he gave us a better opportunity to win when he was playing.
And you can catch that interview with Bill Ripken, the one I did with Jeff Arnold, on Orioles Magic, the podcast. That drops tomorrow. And you can catch the podcast Mondays and Fridays. You can get them on Orioles.com/podcast or wherever your podcasts are downloaded. And that's not all the good content we have for you across all of our Orioles channels right now, including Instagram. My colleague Melanie Newman has a new show out that drops Wednesdays at 11 a.m. called The Grind, a really fun show on Instagram through the Orioles account where she talks to Orioles players, just chit-chatting about life right now and baseball. It's a lot of fun. The Grind with Melanie Newman. And don't forget, now's a great time for us here in Birdland to come together as a community to help out one another. And the best way to do that is to go to Orioles.com/community resources. I had a chance to go the other day. You can go and click on many sites to help out fellow Marylanders right now in need, including going through the Maryland Food Bank website. It's so easy. You can pick groceries out for people you know who are in desperate need during these trying times. So go to Orioles.com/community resources, or you can donate through Facebook and YouTube streams from the Orioles channels. So a lot of great stuff there to do and a lot of great content to listen to and to watch, including what's coming up right now across all the Orioles channels. A look back at one of my all-time favorite Orioles games, September 6th, 2012, O's and Yanks, Cal Ripken night at the ballpark. A pennant race was happening in downtown Baltimore. Enjoy it.